Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the KITE Invited Speaker Series. And this event is also co-sponsored by IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society, the Toronto section, and Women in Engineering Society. I'm also thankful to all those who are joining us virtually, and then we will follow up with the questions if you have. So before I start, I would like to introduce our speakers today who thankfully made all the long trip from Zagreb to here. We're so thankful that you're here and joining us for the talk today. Professor Ratko Magjarević received his PhD in electrical engineering in 1994 from the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Electrical Engineering. After his appointment in industry at the Institute of Electrical Engineering, Končar, he joined the Electronic Measurement and Biomedical Engineering Group at the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computing. He is full professor teaching several courses in electronic instrumentation and biomedical engineering at undergrad, graduate, and postgraduate studies. His scientific and professional interest is in field of electronic and biomedical instrumentation and digital health, in particular in cardiac potentials analysis and pacing, in research of new methods for drug delivery based on electropermeabilization, and recently in research of personalized intelligent mobile health system. He is author or co-author of numerous journal and conference papers, several textbooks, and book chapters. Dr. Magjarević is elected for president of the International Federation for Medical and Biological Engineering, IFBME, from 2022 and to 2025. And we're so fortunate to have Professor Magjarević here, and also he is giving several talks in the Canadian Conference in Biomedical Engineering, which is happening this week in Toronto. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I'm very glad to be here because we also had some contacts before my coming here, and I'm very glad to say that my university is proud that we also signed a memorandum of understanding, which would be the basis for further research. We had several students from Zagreb coming with different scholarships and other programs to the university, to KITE, and probably somewhere else for a number of years. So myself being involved in the international relations in this field and networking, I sincerely hope that also we will have very soon some of the students coming from here to the University of Zagreb. So I made the concept of this presentation in such a way that firstly I speak about the University of Zagreb, because probably most of you have never been there, and also it's Croatia is such a small country that probably many of the people even don't know where it is. And then I will speak something general about the aging society, at least how I see it and my research group sees. And the next two things will be devoted to some technologies that we are working on and that we developed and that we hope to develop later on. And the last few slides will be on the biomedical engineering on the international scene, which means that I will also introduce the IFMBE. So a few slides about my faculty. We are the largest technical faculty in Croatia, and also we are running most of the international projects founded or co-founded by the European Union. We are actually competitors of the Institute Ruđer Bošković, which is sometimes a little bit better than us, but in the last 10 years we are in the lead. Croatia is a country where a lot of inventions that are well known today happened earlier. So the parachute was invented by a person from Croatia. The first torpedo was built in the city at the coast in Rijeka. Then forensic fingerprinting was also discovered by a person from Croatia. And also we had some of the people well known as Nikola Tesla, who is actually the inventor of the AC current, and many other inventions that we use today without any thinking of how are they devoted and who was devoted to their exploration. So, you know, like the students today, when you ask them who is Tesla or what is Tesla, today they say it is a car. And like 20 years ago, they said that's the unit for magnetic strength. So obviously the focus of the information is somehow changing. So these are some of the data that are speaking in favor of our engineers, and mainly of the engineers that have been grown at the University of Zagreb. So these deal with innovation, and today, at least in the policies of the European Union, this practical part of the project is stressed and focused on. At least the new government of my faculty is very much devoted to make the network with the alumni from Croatia, who today hold a lot of very prominent positions around the world. And also we are trying to build also this network within Croatia, where a lot of top companies are based on electrical engineering and computing. We are relatively old university, so the university was founded in 1669, and it is now, of course, still the oldest and the largest university in Croatia. And as you can see, there is a lot of students that are, let's say, involved in teaching in Croatia. In my organization called Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computing, I'm working on the Department of Electronic Systems and Information Processing. So my colleagues Ivana and the colleague, sorry, I didn't hear your name well, they're also coming from this department. So the teaching we have at all 3 levels, and approximately at the master level, we enter approximately 500 students. In addition to the, let's say, classical programs, lately we co-founded some other studies. So biomedical engineering, together with the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture, is the new master program that we are starting this autumn. So since you are mostly devoted to biomedical engineering, I hope that we will get some students also on the student exchange to these studies. And what we are trying to do is to build up the quality of the teaching, because then we also may expect from the society and from the industry to get better results. So these are some of the, let's say, focuses of our intentions currently. So the students from our faculty have a lot of student activities, so we are supporting them in sports, in music, and in international networking. Sorry, long button. And well, we do not have only excellent students, but also we have professors who have been awarded very prominent awards along the award-winning publications and associations. So some of them are amongst the 1% of the best data scientists in the world. The faculty was built in 1959, these 3 buildings, and my department is the newer building which was built in 1990. and we also have a possibility for performing sports in an additional building. Currently, these three buildings are under renovation because of the earthquake which happened like 4 years ago, so that our capacity is very, very reduced now, and professors and students now really have need to give a lot of effort to work on their everyday activities. So in any case, it's not so difficult to find us at the website, at the internet. So this is the address of the website. And well, I hope that some of the students will be willing to visit us also, and that we will continue with performing some research together. Now, I will be speaking about just a very small part of our activities due to the restrictions of the time. So the first activity I will be talking about is our ideas in supporting the elderly. We know that Europe primarily is turning into an old society. So when you look into the statistics, you can see that the percentage of elderly will be growing every year. And if you look at these population pyramids from, let's say, now until the end of the century, you can see that the population will grow much, much older than it is today. Even today, the peak, let's say, is here between 50 and 60 years, and that will move to much higher age later. When we look into another view of the aging, we can see that both for females and males, it is growing. So when you look at the y-axis, you can see that, let's say, the average age of the population from 2002 to 2022 actually grow in 20 years for about 4 years. That is average. That means that it is a really substantial growth for both females and males. Okay, that makes us all happy. We like our grandmothers and our grandfathers and who knows whom else not, who is of elderly age. But unfortunately, this growing older is not without problems. And without the diseases that are caused by the age. So the diseases mean that we have to invest in healing them, and we have to invest in supporting the people. The numbers actually say that that is a very, very large financial burden. And some of the statistics for the United States are saying that the current growth of the expenses for the health care would actually make the USA bankrupt by 2030. So probably that won't happen, but you can see that having a look at the finances in Europe, you can see that the annual average growth per capita for healthcare expenses is higher than the annual average growth per capita in GDP. Only in Ireland for this particular year, it was higher. That means that we have to find a way to make the healthcare sustainable. And we think that technology can help here. And that's why we are trying to do all what we are doing today in our labs and in our research. So I sincerely hope that all of you students will be successful, because currently I think that I don't need that, but I'm sure that in a few years I will start needing that. So I'm really leaning on you to be successful. Otherwise, my old days will not be so nice as I thought they might be. So this is another graph showing the health expenditures in Europe from 2020 until, from 2000 to 2020, and you can see that it is a constant growth that probably here it was caused by COVID, but it's still amazing how much it is. So how can we introduce technology so that we have some, let's say, better results in curing the elderly and preventing some of the consequences. First of all, you know, there is one say in the policy in European Union, and that is that we have to empower the patients. So many of the patients say, okay, now I can come to my doctor and I can say, you know, I want to have MRI of my head because I have a headache. Of course, it's not that. It is much more well thought of. That means that you are empowered to take care of yourself. So many of the decisions that have to be made by the patients themselves. And then we would like to actually make, and it was already introduced some time ago, that we can measure the biological age and also the so-called chronological age. And of course, with the possibility of collecting a lot of data today, we have now big data from where we can try also to make some kind of a prediction models that will help us to understand what is actually the most important thing that we can do to help people grow older but not be biologically old. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused with this pointer here. So anyway, when we speak about keeping the biological age lower, we of course have some issues that we cannot overcome. So our chronological age will be there. Now it's a question whether this delta plus minus 1 or perhaps 1.5 or 3 or 5 years is this span where we can expect some of the people in the population to generate results by their own willing and by their own doing, so that the chronological age and genetics is something we cannot do a lot, but then there is a lot of things where we can influence our own aging. Well, the part of this program in prevention that we were working with medical staff of the University of Zagreb faculty or School of Medicines was in supporting some of their activities, especially the physical activity. And then we were working in actually these 4 ways of tracking and leading the physical activity of the elderly. We had access to the School of Kinesiology in Zagreb and to a number of homes for elderly. And we developed these programs that were enabling somebody to program their physical activity on the daily basis or weekly basis, but also we were trying to track automatically how well they are performing and how well not only in the terms of how long they exercise and which exercises they did, but also how well they performed a particular movement. So I will be talking about that a little bit later. Of course, when we speak about the elderly, we also have to take care about the emotional and mental health. So in many cases, elderly unfortunately start to get dementia, and then that complicates their lives quite a lot. So I will probably remember to mention a little bit later on what were the issues that we had when we were trying to implement some of the technology in the homes for the elderly. So in the rest of the presentations, I will touch monitoring of the behavior patterns of the elderly, concentrated on exercising, and also on tracking the activities of daily living. And then the second part will have some results on our, let's say, research in detection of unwanted hazards, events, which means particularly different kind of falls. Of course, there are a lot of technologies that may be included into this research. What we were primarily doing was that we were using wearable technology. We were trying to develop smart algorithms for the analysis of the data, and then also some of the machine learning, and generally speaking, artificial intelligence tools that are applied then to the big data. So we must be honest here that the big data was not very big data, because for many of these problems of, let's say, fault detections, there are not a large number of open databases. So we were also making a lot of data acquisitions ourselves. And therefore, the number of the entries was not more than several hundred of faults that we were able to follow up. Of course, these were all simulated faults. And I would just like to mention that there was one company in Germany who gave 1,000 sensors to 1,000 elderly people for 1 year. These were also IMU-based sensors with accelerometers as we were using. You know how many faults they recorded? 1,000 people in 1 year. Guess, best guess. Okay, be brave. 2. Why? As I said, you have these problems of dementia, also of willingness and not willingness. So they really had sensors for 1 year. But the question is how many times they were carrying them. And then, of course, you know, this is the population that is relatively well. So they have some problems with balance and high blood pressure or low blood pressure and so on, but they are not the type of person who is falling several times a day. So that this was really a very, very disappointing thing. And then, therefore, many of these research groups who were dealing with elderly actually introduced this simulated faults. And there is a whole, let's say, whole procedure on what kind of faults you may simulate, which way, which are more natural, and so on. So perhaps we can speak about that some other time. So also one of the issues that you always have to think of when you are talking about this mass introduction of sensors like fault detection and so on is how well they are accepted by the population. So minimal disruption of the users is one of them. So that, let's say, with having the sensor somewhere on the belt for men is easy. For women, you have to invent something else, how they would carry it. Proven utility. One of the problems here is actually false positives. Because if you introduce it into the system and let's say into system in a nursing home, if some person is reporting 3 falls a day and he or she did not fall at all, what do the nurses do? Switch the system off. So you have to be pretty well in these detections. And then we come, of course, to the burden of the costs. So in Croatia, the question was, who is going to give it? Is it the elderly home who is going to equip them? Or is it themselves who have to buy it? So you see with the healthcare systems, the policy is quite a big issue because you say we will prevent like diabetes, you know. Once you are detected diabetic, they say complications will start in 10 years. So if you want to make any kind of a prevention program, this exercising and appropriate diet and everything else, you have to implement it now. But you see the Minister of Health, he thinks, well, I started my mandate. The chance that I stay minister in the other mandate is quite big. But the chance that I'm in the same position in the 3rd mandate doesn't seem very possible. So who cares? That's the problem of another guy. I'm now making my constatations a little bit sarcastic, but that's, you know, what you see when you come into the idea that you implement your idea for prevention. Everybody is talking about prevention, diabetes, prevention, and so on, but actually it's really difficult to enter that into the real life. Well, the quantities that you can today acquire on a human body are many, so they're electrical and mechanical and chemical and the temperature. So you actually can choose the optimal sensors for a particular follow-up of some of the technologies. And today, the preferences are actually on sensors that are wearable, and then they form some kind of a network, and then by some kind of telemetry today, mainly connected to the mobile phones, you can transfer the data or some other information. And these technologies today not replacing some of the sensors like the Holter, where you need to have continuous recording without any interruption, like the Holter for the ECG. A lot of technology does exist, and then today we have some of the integrated circuits which really integrate practically all of the functionalities of an ECG, so it's not such a very big problem to make some portable sensors of your own if you have your own research. So we also made such a device that had one of these analog front ends, and then we could choose to transfer in real time the information or to save it on a micro SD. We also were tracking the activity of the patients, and this is the part having to do with the bandwidth management. Well, you know, sometimes also when you come to the conference and then you talk about such issues and so on, then they say, well, why do you actually do everything yourself? Why don't you buy? But you see, in my school, we are trying to teach the students how to design the electronic equipment, biomedical instruments and so on. So the best way to do it is to use their own knowledge to design such devices, because then they're confronted with not the results of somebody else's work, but with the problems they meet when they deal with electromagnetic interference, small signals, noise, and everything else that comes with the sensorics plus the front end, or let's say amplifiers and filters that are at the beginning of this chain. We have built up our own wireless sensor network. We also were not using in all the experiments all the sensors, but the general idea is we had a lot of sensor nodes. They had some kind of a pre-processing at the, sorry, I'm not good with this pointer. Yeah, so they had some kind of acquisition and then data pre-processing, so that the results of this process were sent to a central unit, and then the result was actually that in most cases, of course, the patients were fine. If we detected there is any kind of a situation where they would need some kind of advice or help, then we rose some kind of a red alarm. And in the other cases, if we are not sure what's happening with the patients, then we sent a message so that the situation could have been checked. We then also developed a network that was particularly designed for diabetic patients. So there were a lot of sensors that were actually only partially used, that means part-time. The main one was dealing with the heart rate and physical activity, but then the patients were using glucometers that were able to memorize the measurement results of the glucose. Then also we added a digital blood pressure meter, and one of the things that we invented for this case was a device which is actually a weight measurement system, but we added also a scanner. And the background here is that a large problem is with scanning of the feet and of the decision making. let's say with the nurses, patronage nurses, when they visit the patients who have open wounds on their feet, you know, they sometimes even take a photo, but then they sometimes take it from 1 meter, sometimes from 70 centimeters and so on, and then it's a very big problem to actually judge how much the healing was improved or whether it went the other way down. So in this case, when the patients were weighting themselves, the feet were also scanned, and then it was much easier. The manipulations with the images of the feet were much easier to detect the progress of this kind of the wounds. And of course, one of the problems that we also had to solve was how to collect this data all the time. So at that time, we had used some of the home network. When the patient was outside, then it was connected to the standard mobile network, and then at the workplace, it was also possible to connect to the system and to transfer the data to the, let's say, data processing on the higher level. We organized this with the workplace collection of the data, because one of the sponsors was Croatian Telecom, and then they engaged it within their workers and so on. So also one of the reasons that we were developing our own system was that since we were able to enter our own program in the embedded systems, we were also able to program it in such a way that based on some patient data, we can make personalized health decisions, so that this was, let's say, a step toward the personalization of this healthcare. How did the sensor nodes look like? So this was like the first version, this was like the second version. And in addition to the ECG, what we wanted to learn was not only the quantity of the movements that a particular person did, but also whether he did it in a correct way or not. And also we built a calibrator for our sensor so that we know, sorry, again, I have not taken the right button, so that we're also able to make a quick checkup, because with, I don't know, 30 sensors, it's easy to check whether they're all working right and making the right measurements. So that then the movements actually were mainly tracked by the accelerometer data. So after getting some processing and taking some of the features out, we made some vector support machine, let's say support and learning, and then the recognition of particular movements. So we are now speaking about the detection of different kind of activities of daily living. These are some of the features that we used. And the environment, one of the places where we were taking our measurements was training, let's say training space for a karate club in Zagreb. So these are the activities of daily living plus the falls that we were actually recording. So again, the signals look different. So the real questions for us was actually, what do we want to detect? We want to detect the activities of daily living, and then it's nice to see how much a person is spending in walking. Probably the elderly are not running that often, but they are still, let's say, sitting down and standing up and lying down and so on. And these are the records that you get in these activities. So let's say we call it jerk activities. So another problem that is being in real life with the elderly people is that they don't sit down normally. They usually throw themselves into the chair. So that these signals that are recorded look very much like the signals that you get by different kind of the falls. So the whole idea in the further, let's say, project that we had was to differentiate these signals. So let's say these signals that we recorded of walking up and down the stairs and so on, they were used just to exclude that this was a case of fall. And then we concentrated more on differentiating this kind of the signals. They look different and the same at the same time. So when you look at it, so to say, blind, then you really have to make quite a lot of effort to differentiate them. Then with the classification, these are the classification of activities of daily living. If you expect too much to good results, then you will not get such good results, because it is some of these things, it's very difficult to differentiate. So first of all, let's say the definition of running and fast running, you know. So who of you knows what's the difference? So it's just something that theoretically you set some kind of the threshold values, and then you get some of these results. But when you take the classification in a, let's say, rougher way, then you don't ask for 13 classes, but only for 4 classes, the classification is then, of course, much better. So if this suits your needs for differentiating these activities of daily living from the falls, then that is something that you may be wanting to use. The theoretical part of this investigation that we made, and when we were recording our own data set with 3 different devices, was to, let's say, find the 4 parts of the fall as an activity or of some event. So the part where there is nothing interesting happening, then the beginning of the falling, then the impact when the person really throws himself to the floor, and then what is happening after this has been detected. So for the implementation, let's say, it's this C part where you actually see no activity in this case, which was detected as a serious fall, is that if you see that the person is standing up here and continuing his walking or whatsoever, then that means it's not so serious as if he stops moving and does not make any further movement. So what we did in our algorithm is that we divided our suspicious falls into 3 time windows, and what we were trying to see for the algorithm, what is the best duration of these windows in order to get the better results in the detection. Okay, let's skip this and this here as well. So we made some, let's say, proposals where we were analyzing the results with having only this window 1 before the impact and after the impact, and then when we added also searching for what's happening before and after the fall itself. So with all these feature extraction and some of the calculations for 3 different databases that we had been using also as the let's say, proving our results, you can see that we were able to get quite good results, but of course, in case that you use all the 3 windows, you get the results that are much better than if you use this more simple model. Finally, when you try to put all these durations of the 4 time sequences together, then you can see that for each of these times, T1, T2, T3, 4, and 4, you get this, let's say, light green area where the choice of the duration of these periods is giving the best results. And what we are now trying to see whether we can improve in this fall detection especially in differentiation between the fall and the sitting down and standing up, which has a pretty same pattern, is also to measure the difference of the position of the sensor before sitting down or falling to the floor with additional sensor, which is an altimeter. Currently, 1 year ago when we started this examination or investigation, one of our problems was that we could only get altimeters with 20 centimeters resolution, so that we now build our own sensors also with some better sensors. Okay, so this is now the end of the story of the fall detection, so we'll try to improve it even better in the next year. About the physical activity, I will just skip to the slides to tell you what we were doing. So we had several sensors on the human body and, of course, a limited number of exercises. The idea was to see whether for large groups we can make reliable measurements with only one sensor and which position of the sensors that would be. And so to say, how much sense does the whole story do? So for making these judgments, we, of course, had recorded the exercises, and then we were calculating the spectrum. Then we got some kind of a peak frequency, and we used that for filtering of the signals, so that we then could smooth the signal very much to get some kind of a peaks of the movements, and then we transferred it to the original signal, and then we tracked the different kind of exercises to get something that we called actually the signatures of the different exercises or repetition templates. So based on that, you can make some judgment. There are two ways of judging it. First is how much repeatability is in somebody's movements, and the other one is if you can find some kind of a gold standard from a person who is, like, say, an expert in doing these exercises, you can then compare it to that person. And as you can see with the results, there are some people who really get, let's say, excellent results. So practically 100 of the movements have been performed well. And there are, of course, people who do not do it well, and then perhaps the trainer can be working with them on improving these issues. Also, one of the problems that we were approaching were some European policies. So in 2020, we had a large, let's say, conference meeting where we were trying to influence some European Union policies in the issues of better future for healthy aging. And now we know that some of these results of this, let's say, conference have been implemented in some of the decisions of the European Union. So this is the list of our papers, but that's not so interesting. So if you allow me for another few minutes to say something about this International Federation for Medical and Biological Engineering, I concentrated here on the networking issues, but it is also seen that the networking is one of the issues that is met by the definition of our mission and also by the definition of the goals of the IFMBE. We cover a large part of the developed world. We have less membership So in East Asia, we started getting now also membership in Africa. So our aim is to get as many colleagues as possible into the federation and to build up common policies. How can we build these common policies? Together with medical physicists, we form a union which is dealing with, let's say, technical issues. The next year we will have a World Congress in Adelaide in Australia. So why is this union important? Because then we can reach even further to the International Science Council. This council is under UNESCO. This council are the people who are thinking of the future more than 1 decade, like 2 or 3 decades. These are people who, let's say, started publishing about warming of the earth and such disasters to be expected like the floods and strong winds and I don't know what everything else. So you see, it's now the question, do we as biomedical engineers want to be there? Do we care? Of course we care, because whenever there is some disaster, there is some technical need also necessary. What we learned, let's say, from that banking holiday disaster and what do you call it, tsunami, was that actually the most of the victims were not physically from the tsunami, but from the lack of clean water later on. So these were the most deaths that happened there. So did we know that earlier? I don't think so, but now in the preparation of, let's say, these events in those areas where they expect that tsunamis might be really very, very powerful, now they obviously organize it so that there are some containers with water that can hold for several months and so on and so on. So next slide is showing this structure that I just mentioned, but also we are a non-governmental organization that is present in the WHO. It means that we are able to act there. And how do we act? We prepare some of the publications together with the WHO. We are working on such projects like the priority medical devices for different diseases, chronic diseases, cancer, and so on and so on. And we also may be involved in the preparation of some of the General Assembly declarations. Who cares? It's just another piece of paper. But it's another piece of paper. These declarations and resolutions of the WHO are signed by the ministers of health. So if you say that, let's say in this resolution, the health technologies have to be considered, and there are some recommendations how to do it, what to do, who has to do it, and so on. So this is like something that the governments then have to include in their development of healthcare within 3, 5, 10 years. It depends on how deep the resolutions go. So that means that we are helping the medical world, the medical doctors and the economists working in the WHO to make the issues more technical so that people who are on the ground implementing them can use it in an easier way than when it is prepared by persons who are not professionals. And then again, we are also active within the World Engineering World Federation of Engineering Organizations. So this is also an organization that is taking care of a lot of issues. And here the activities are along the Sustainable Development Goals, especially on this third one, which is good health and well-being. I think that if you want to hear a little bit more about specific of these activities, I may invite you to come to the lecture on Wednesday at the Canadian Congress. So thank you very much, and sorry for taking perhaps too much of your time. But if there is the willingness for some questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the great and very comprehensive talk of your research of University of Zagreb and then also IFBME. So do we have questions from the audience? Yes, go ahead, please.
Telecom. Recently, and like for many years now, a lot of public services and like banking corporations have had like cybersecurity attacks that can like take down the services or do other things. So how do you keep these type of healthcare infrastructure, which has a lot of sensitive information and also in your case could issue alerts? How do you prevent like malicious attacks and hacking?
This is the beauty when you have some kind of a project where there is not one partner, but that's a project. So the answer is it's them who take care of that, because to be honest, I'm a biomedical engineer or electronic engineer, and my interest is in designing the devices and in working on different kind of algorithms and so on. And there is no real need that I also learn something about the technologies that are preventing the data and so on. That's their job. That's that they are doing for the healthcare system generally. That means for Croatian Health Care Institute and the Ministry of Health and so on. So that's just something that's considered to be their issue, not ours. We even do not test ourselves this kind of fraud attacks and so on. So it's something that they do it under controlled conditions and so on. So there was also one of the projects that we were negotiating. So they wanted to use some of our infrastructures to simulate the attacks in the 5G network, but well, it didn't start yet. So sorry, it's not a great answer to your question, but you know, the answer is there are people who know how to do that.
Any other questions? Yes.
Design the system, do you have a way for the patient to provide the feedback, whether the fault detection is valid? Because as you were saying, like there's different patterns, right, of the activity and different directions of the fall. Mm-hmm. Is there a way for the patient to give that feedback into your system and saying whether it's...
Currently, the number of elderly persons who are involved is very limited. So that's always per month. It's not an automatic system that they confirm, yes, I fell to my front or something like that. So that's why we are making these numerous simulated falls. So it's always a little bit difficult, you know, to make somebody to, let's say, fall to the front, you know. So therefore, there is one, there are actually like 4 different experiments. So it's easier for me, let's say, to say, how do we perform these exercises? So you have a person who is standing, somebody else is keeping him for his hands, and then the person who is falling decides when to fall, okay? So he lands to the front and then let's go. The other more, let's say, dangerous one is when the person who is holding him lets go when he wants to do it, okay? And then we have the same situation with somebody sitting in front of me. So I'm holding him. It's either him who decides when to fall, and then also I can decide when he's going to fall, okay? So it's a whole scenario. So we are trying to reach the situation where the fall moment is really independent on the willingness of the person who is simulating the fall. In real life, you know, again, one of the problems may be that the person may be falling between the furniture or something like that. And then it's really, I think, important that we have this other sensor, the altimeter, as one of the relevant ones that can show that you really reach from, like, say, approximately 1 meter to approximately 20 centimeters, because when you lay down, then the sensor will be on certain height above the ground. It's not that the sensor is touching the ground.
Thank you very much. We're almost at 1 o'clock, or actually a few minutes past 1 o'clock. So for the sake of time, we're going to end the meeting today. You're all more than welcome to attend Dr. Magjarević talk at the CNBC conference, and he's giving 2 talks in the coming days, actually 3. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to him either directly or through Ivana or myself. Thank you so much. Thank you.